Hello, I'm Ashley from Yoga for That and the founder of the So You're a Yoga Teacher, Now What coaching program. And today I'm here to talk to you about the etiquette of being a yoga teacher. Before I became a yoga teacher, I had a career in corrections, of all things, and I took my first yoga class right before I got married and had such an amazing experience that I decided I also wanted to be a yoga teacher. And so the following year, I took my teacher training program, and I've been teaching ever since to varying degrees of intensity. So when I started teaching, my way of communicating and taking on the role of a yoga teacher came from a very professional experience and background. So I treated my yoga job as a job, but I know that some people take on teaching yoga as a side gig, which it is for me now, and maybe it's not so much a job but more of a hobby or just something they really enjoy, so there's not that kind of feeling of responsibility. But at the same time, if you're looking to keep a job or keep a class full time or wanting to take on more classes, I believe it's really important to treat each yoga job as a job. And it might seem kind of counterintuitive because as yoga teachers, we're very kind of flowy and we want to have that freedom in our schedules. But at the same time, it is still a job. So there's kind of this balance that we do have to play. So I'm going to share some tips with you of how to consider acting as a yoga teacher for the hopes that you want this as more of a long-time, either part-time job or even as maybe your full-time job. First things first is to be connecting with all of the players in the studio. So as you arrive to a class, you're saying hi to the students, you're saying hi to the front desk staff, you're connecting with people you know and that you don't know. And this is really important because then everyone knows that you're in the studio, you're ready to teach, you're in your teaching mode. Connecting the front desk staff, letting them know you're there, connecting with new students and students you haven't seen for a while, and just being really involved in the space so that you kind of pick up those vibes of the space and they know that you're in the space in the role as a yoga teacher. It's also important to appear approachable. Now, I'm one of those people that no matter how hard I try to look unapproachable, I could have my hood on, my headphones in, head down, and someone on the street is still going to ask me for directions, even if I'm trying to not really be approached at that time. So most of the time I feel that I'm approachable, and maybe sometimes I don't appear approachable to some people, but when I'm really trying to be, yes, I appear approachable. So making sure you walk into the studio not with your headphones in, that you're being aware of the space, you're making eye contact with people, maybe you're saying hi to someone you haven't seen for a while, or having a quick conversation with the front desk staff, whatever it is, that you seem aware and that you're involved. You can get your space set up and still be connecting with people as they walk by. So maybe you're putting your mat down, setting up your music, and as people walk by, say hi, haven't seen you in a while, or welcome to the studio, or welcome to my class, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be long, huge conversations with students, but really just letting them know that you're aware of their presence. If you come into class in a bad mood or you've had a bad day, try not to let that affect your class in a negative way. You can definitely use your experiences as teaching moments. So maybe you had a bad drive-in, so you explain that you used your yogi breath to really reconnect in the moment, or that when you got to the studio, you sat in your car for a couple rounds of breath just to center and ground. So you can still explain your day, and you can keep them involved in what it's like to be you, but use those as teaching moments rather than just coming in a huff and explaining you had a bad day and then starting to teach the class, because you've now set the tone that you don't really want to be there or that you're in a bad place. So it's okay to tell people that you're not perfect, that you have bad days too, but how do you deal with those days, right? It's really important to use everything that you do as a learning experience for your students. Doesn't mean you have to be perfect, so you can still be real and authentic without bringing down the mood of the room or the tone in the room. Use a friendly tone, use friendly words when you're in the studio as well. This is something that I also try to practice out in the real world as well, because once you get in the studio, I find when I'm tired or I get anxious that I just start to say things automatically, things that I would say any other time. So if you're used to saying positive things, if you're used to being in the right frame of mind all the time, then it makes it a lot easier to be communicating with your students in a very authentic and real way without having to put on this persona or use a different voice even. So using friendly tones, friendly words, being mindful of what you're saying to people, being mindful of how you're interacting with staff, what you're saying, just being very aware that eyes are on you all the time when you're in the studio, and this could be said as well if you're just taking classes. Just be really mindful of how you're interacting with people. If you're in a studio that you teach at a lot, you're always kind of on, so just make sure that you're in the right frame of mind to be in that space. And if you really need to be in a space that's safe, I would say go to a studio that you don't teach at and take a class there, just so you can kind of be in your own world, in your own space, and not have to worry about what other people are thinking of you or that they're watching you. So some things to consider if you do consider this a job, which you should, even if you're only doing it once in a while, is to always be professional, and that can go to when you're taking classes as well. But not swearing in class. This also goes to not using music with swear words in it. I know I swear like a sailor, and I don't believe that swearing is a bad thing. But at the same time, there's a lot of people that it harshes the conversation, and it can just kind of jolt you, especially if you're listening to music and swear words come into it. It just kind of jolts you out of the space, I find. And as a teacher, if I'm listening to music and that comes up, it really just kind of shocks me. It doesn't bug me when I'm listening to music or podcasts. That stuff doesn't bug me at all. But there's something kind of sacred about the yoga space. So making sure that you're not using profanity in your music or in your talking. And obviously, once people get to know you, maybe you have private classes and that's just who you are, that's fine. But just something to really consider, that you're serving a large group of people, and that might just be something that would be good to not be doing a lot of. Wearing appropriate clothing. Now, this can be a really kind of hot topic amongst teachers. I teach in a hot yoga studio, or I used to quite a bit. So a lot of teachers wear, their leggings and their sports bras. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I would just be cautious of how you're portraying yourself as a yoga teacher. And so I prefer to, I wear yoga pants, I try to wear pretty appropriate tops. I'm a bit busty, so sometimes tops look a little bit more provocative than maybe they were intended to. So just know that when you go into the class that all eyes are on you. So how do you really want to portray yourself as a teacher? And if you're quite happy in wearing what you're wearing, then go for it. Be mindful that some studios might have dress codes, so they might have colors they want you to wear, or certain styles of clothing they want you to wear, or kind of like a theme or something that they want you to kind of go by. So just make sure you know that going in and that it fits with what you're comfortable wearing and looking like in class. Hygiene. Hygiene is super, super important. I know that, and from teaching in a hot studio, by the end of the day, you just look like a hot mess. But when you go into class, at least try to look like you're kind of put together. So I'll usually have my hair up, especially if it's dirty. It goes straight up into a bun. But my clothes are clean when I come into the next day, so my clothes smell good. I'm a big believer in deodorant. I know there's like a natural movement. I get that. But honestly, as a student and a teacher, there's absolutely nothing worse than when the teacher just absolutely smells. And I understand that they might have been teaching classes earlier, or it's a hot summer day. And if you don't want to wear deodorant, that's fine, but maybe like give yourself a quick little wash in the bathroom between classes. I just really, really believe that the space should smell at least fresh. It doesn't have to be that you have on fake scents to make it smell good. Scents in general are very hot topic as well, so just try to keep everything pretty neutral as much as you can. That's just my personal opinion, but I've also heard this in a lot of teacher trainings. It's just being mindful as how you show up physically, emotionally, mentally, and hygiene as well. So something to consider. Be on time. So being on time as a yoga teacher is usually showing up 10 to 15 minutes before your class starts. And you don't get paid for this time, but honestly, it sets a good example to your students that you take it seriously, that you're there on time. Set up your mat, set up your music, put out the props. This doesn't mean you have to be in the room the whole time, so you can go to the washroom, fill up your water, get yourself some tea, check in with the front desk staff. Maybe if you collect tokens, you're grabbing your basket. And this is the time you can walk around the studio as well, connecting with people, kind of checking out the space, make sure the heat's the right temperature, make sure you have everything you need for class. So getting there the 10 to 15 minutes before is mostly for you, so that you don't come in, 2 to 5 minutes before your class and you're rushing around and something goes wrong and now you need help. So just make sure that you're on time, and by on time again I mean 10 to 15 minutes before the class starts. Be polite and kind to everyone. There's always going to be students that get under your nerves, that bother you, that say things, that just don't show up on time, that are needy. There's all sorts of people in the world, and all of those people go to yoga. So as much as you can, take control of the room, but be mindful that maybe that person is showing up in the best way that they can. So guiding them to get into the room on time, guiding them to put their stuff away, guiding them to put their phone away. Think of it as a little bit of hand-holding, but you're helping them and you're creating a safe space for them and for the students around them. So if you find someone is being a little bit disruptive, just make sure that you're connecting with that person in a positive way. It can be really easy to get frustrated and show the class that you're on their side and that this is irritating to you and to them. But honestly, just taking that time to show that you also care about this disruptive student will show everyone that everyone's best interest is in your best interest, and you have everyone to consider, and that you are considering all of those people's thoughts, emotions, feelings, everything that's going on. You're there for everyone, not just for the people that show up on time, not just for the people that are following your directions perfectly. You're creating that space to hold for everyone in the room, no matter what kind of wackiness they come in with. Be honest. If a student comes to you and says, I want to do handstands today, and you don't teach handstands or you don't feel comfortable teaching handstands, tell them that's fine. Maybe you suggest a teacher or a studio or a workshop that they can take if that's something they really would like in their practice. So you don't have to meet everybody's needs. If someone says, I want the music louder, I want the music quieter, the music quieter you should probably do. But if someone's saying the music is louder, or they want it to be louder, but for you and your own teaching, you need it at the level it's at so you can be projecting your voice appropriately, explain that to them. Or you might say, oh, thank you for your feedback. Maybe we'll consider getting a mic so the music can be louder and I can still be projecting my voice in a way that everyone can hear me. So you don't have to say, oh yes, of course I'll do that and do it right away. Have a conversation with them if it's appropriate, and just have that honest conversation with them. You're not their employee, or you're not there just to serve them. You are there to serve a class to them in a way that makes sense to you and is safe for the rest of the class. So definitely say you'll consider their feedback, or explain to them why or why not you don't do something. It doesn't have to be an argument, it's just an explanation. And I think that's really fair to have that conversation with students, just so that they know that you are listening to them, but there's a way that you do things to make the room safe for everybody. As a teacher, it's important also to be proactive. So being proactive means taking into consideration things ahead of time or as you see them before they get worse. So if you see someone new in class, check in with them, ask them if they've been any injuries, how much yoga they've done before, how comfortable they feel in this space, how you can make them feel more comfortable. If you see someone struggling in a pose, immediately give a modification if you haven't already, or if you've already spoken to the modification, you might show it again or speak to it again. And that gives that student an opportunity to hear it as they're in that pose and maybe take that modification instead. Also, always have a backup plan. So if you've ever gone to a class to teach and you wanted to do shoulder openers and everyone in that class has shoulder problems, or they all want to do hamstring stuff instead, obviously, if you don't have a backup plan, do the best that you can with what you've got. But it helps to have a backup plan as well. Maybe everyone is new or everyone is super experienced, so just speak to that. And it doesn't have to be that you change your sequence, but maybe you just offer more variations. You offer a little bit more power, more heat if they're an advanced group, or you offer more modifications if they're a more beginner group. Sometimes when we're teaching, we don't always know the group that we're going into, especially if it's a corporate class or a new studio you're teaching at or a new time slot you're teaching at. So just be mindful, kind of have a few different things in your belt so that when you get there, you can offer the best class that you can for the group you have in front of you. Please let me know in the comments what you thought of my tips, and if you're struggling with anything right now when you're teaching, so I can touch on it in another video. If you liked this video, please hit the thumbs up button and make sure to share this video with a friend if you think they would find it helpful. You can find more information in the little description below, where you can find me on Facebook, and you can find me at yogaforthat.com. Have an awesome rest of your day, and we'll see you again next time. Bye!